Welcome back, listeners. We're diving deep today, ready to explore, and we're going back to 1985 for this one. We're looking at a sci-fi show. It's called Otherworld. And this might be one that slipped past you, but trust me, this one sounds like a real trip. So picture this. The Sterling family, just your average family, they're on vacation, right? They're at the Great Pyramid of Giza when, boom, they're suddenly zapped into a parallel universe, and this place is called Thel. But here's the thing, this isn't your run-of-the-mill parallel world. Thel, it's broken up into these totally separate zones, each with its own, bizarre societies and rules.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept, because it takes those classic sci-fi ideas, parallel worlds, all that, but then it adds this whole layer of like exploring different societies. Each zone becomes like a mini society,
Yeah.
Showing different human ideologies and structures.
Exactly. And that's what really grabbed my attention, too. The document, it mentions things like zone troopers, there's a church of artificial intelligence, and even, get this, a city that's like a photographic negative of New York City. It's like they mashed up the Twilight Zone with some kind of weird travel show. Before we get lost in all those crazy zones, I'm curious about the Sterling family themselves. Who are these people who get thrown into this interdimensional mess?
Well, you've got Hal and June, the
It's
parents,
like, right.
and they're just trying to hold it together in this crazy new reality. Can you imagine? Then there's the teenage kids, Trace and Gina. They're dealing with it all in their own teenage ways. And then you've got little Smith, the youngest, and his perspective on this whole thing. That's got to be the most interesting, I think.
Yeah, kids, they kind of just roll with the punches, don't they? Even in the weirdest situations. But being stranded in a parallel universe, that's a pretty big adjustment, even for a kid. And on top of all that, it sounds like they've got this Commander Naveen Kroll, and he's played by Jonathan Banks, so he's serious, right? He's on their trail the whole time. What's his deal?
Right. So Kroll, he's this high-ranking zone trooper. He's basically our main bad guy, the antagonist. He's totally fixated on catching the Sterlings because, get this, they have something called an access crystal. It's this thing that lets them travel between the zones, which is normally like super restricted. So you can imagine how much that bugs a control freak like Kroll, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. So this access crystal, it's like their golden ticket in this world. I can see why he'd be after them. Okay, so let's talk about those zones, shall we? Let's jump into some of their episodic adventures. The first episode, it's called Rules of Attraction, and it takes them to this place called the Sarlax Province. What's the vibe there? Like, what's it all about?
Okay, imagine a mining colony, but the workers, they're all sentient androids, like robots with feelings. The Sterlings quickly realize that these androids are treated like second-class citizens. They face discrimination, and there's this thing called memory audits, where their memories are like scanned and analyzed. It's really creepy.
Wow, talk about an invasion of privacy. That's intense. Makes you think about the ethics of all this advanced technology, even in a parallel universe. And then the next episode, The Zone Troopers Build Men, that takes us into the world of, well, those zone troopers, right? What's the deal with those guys? What are they all about?
Well, they're like the enforcers of Phil's system,
Yeah.
They keep everything in line. And we really see this when Trace, the son, he gets caught up in their brutal training regimen. It's all about conformity, obedience, no stepping out of line, that kind of thing. And the episode really highlights the show's theme of, control versus freedom, societal control versus individual freedom.
That's interesting, especially considering, well, think about the time period. 1985, that was like peak Cold War. And there was a lot of anxiety about authoritarianism, about losing your freedom.
Exactly. Science fiction, it often reflects the worries of its time, right? And Otherworld,
Yeah.
it seemed to tap into those Cold War fears, but it uses this fantastical setting, this parallel world to do it.
That's really cool. Yeah, I like that. So they're dealing with these controlling zone troopers, and then in Paradise Lost, they end up on this mysterious island resort. And this place, it promises immortality, so not too shabby, right?
Well, yeah, but it's all a facade, It's not what it seems. The Sterlings, they quickly learn that this so-called paradise is built on secrets and dangerous technology. We're talking like deadly laser storms, that kind of danger. It plays on that classic idea, be careful what you wish for, especially when it comes to something like immortality.
Yikes. Sounds like every zone throws a new curveball at them. And then in Rock and Roll Suicide, it's the kids, Trace and Gina, who stir things up, right? They introduce rock and roll to the Centrix province. What could be so controversial about that, right? I mean, it's just music.
Well, apparently in this zone, music and any kind of self-expression is totally controlled by, get this, the Church of Artificial Intelligence. They see rock and roll as chaos, as rebellion,
Pretty ironic, yeah. It's like the show is, I don't know, flipping things around, making the familiar seem strange. And this Church of AI, it sounds, well, kind of creepy, to be honest.
That was a big worry in the 80s, of computers becoming more common, early AI research, all that. And they control, like, every part of life.
Sounds like the Sterlings are getting a crash course in dystopian societies, that's for sure. What other weirdness are they going to run into on this journey?
So next up, they meet this group they're called the Motor Pigs, and they're basically like the fell version of hippies.
Hmm.
Counterculture, free spirits, rejecting all that rigid control they've seen in the other zones.
That's kind of funny, You'd think in a parallel universe things would be totally different, but they've still got their own version of, like, hippies. I guess some things are just, universal no matter what dimension you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting, they actually cast Marjo Gortner as their leader.
Yeah.
He was a former evangelist who became an actor, and he was known for, like, exposing religious hypocrisy.
Mhm.
So it kind of adds this whole other layer to the idea of, questioning authority, challenging the system.
Oh, wow. Okay, so there's some meta casting going on there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely open to interpretation. That's what's so cool about Otherworld. It makes you think. And then to shake things up even more, they travel to a zone where, get this, the gender roles are totally reversed. It's called I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. And even our tough guy, Commander Kroll, he doesn't know what to do with himself.
Wow, that's a concept. It's interesting how science fiction can take something we think of as, normal, everyday stuff and just flip it around. Makes you question everything. So what happens when Kroll runs into this matriarchal society?
He's completely lost.
Yeah.
His authority means nothing. His whole idea of masculinity is challenged. It forces him to confront his own biases, the stuff he doesn't even realize he believes. In this episode, it also shows how societal norms, they're kind of arbitrary. What's normal in one culture is totally weird in another. It's a reminder that there are tons of ways to organize a society, and what works in one place might not work somewhere else.
It's that kind of stuff, the stuff that makes you think, that makes Otherworld more than just your typical sci-fi adventure. It's not just about escaping from one danger to the next. It's about exploring these bigger ideas about humanity. And then in Mansion of the Beast, they encounter a mutated human, right? That sounds like it goes to a darker place.
It does a bit, but it's also surprisingly touching.
Yeah.
This beast, he's actually a tragic figure. He's ostracized. People are afraid of him because of how he looks. It explores loneliness, transformation, even love. It gets pretty deep. And they got Alan Feinstein, he's a famous composer, and John Astin, he's known for comedy, to guest star, which is interesting. He adds this mix of tragedy and whimsy to the episode.
Wait, John Astin, like Gomez Adams, John Astin, seriously, what was he doing in this episode?
He played the caretaker of the mansion. And it's a really moving performance, actually. You see this comedic actor playing someone full of regret, sorrow. It adds another layer to the whole thing.
Wow, so even with a mutated human, they're still finding ways to surprise us with the casting, with the depth of the characters. Otherworld is really good at subverting expectations, it seems.
It is, yeah. And the final episode, Princess Metra, it's no different. Gina, the daughter, she gets mistaken for royalty in this zone that's stuck in like a medieval society. And get this, they find a John F. Kennedy half dollar that's 200 years old, which suggests that maybe time works differently on Fel.
Whoa, hold on. So not only are they dealing with these weird societies, but also messed up time stuff. That's a whole other level of weird.
Right, and this idea of time being different between dimensions, it's something you see a lot in science fiction, especially with parallel universes, alternate timelines, all that. It makes you think about time itself, Is it really as constant and linear as we think it is?
It's definitely mind-bending stuff, that's for sure. But what I'm really enjoying about Otherworld, it's not just the big sci-fi ideas, it's the little details, the things that stick with you, like those obelisks with eyes, the ones that mark the path to Emar, or the fact that Emar in the opening credits, it's shown as a photographic negative of New York City.
Yeah, those visuals are so striking, and they really speak to this idea of Fel being like a reflection of our world, a distorted reflection, but still, it's like the show is saying, what if our reality was just a little off, a little bit inverted? How would that change us?
And then there's Roderick Taylor. He created the show, and he pops up in every episode. It's like he's this mischievous presence, a reminder that the show doesn't take itself too seriously.
It adds that self-awareness,
Yeah.
Like it's winking at the audience saying, we know this is all a bit out there, but just enjoy the ride. And I think that's part of what makes Otherworld so charming, that it doesn't get weighed down and being too serious.
Yeah, it's that balance, the seriousness and the playfulness that makes it work. But under the surface, there's definitely a lot going on thematically. They're exploring societal control, artificial intelligence, the nature of reality. That's some heavy stuff for a seemingly lighthearted sci-fi show.
Oh, absolutely. And what's really interesting is that those themes, they're still so relevant today. We're
Yeah.
dealing with anxieties about AI, debates about freedom versus control, and we're constantly questioning reality in this increasingly digital world.
It's almost like Otherworld was ahead of its time in some ways. It was tapping into these anxieties that were just starting to emerge in the 80s, and now they're everywhere.
Right, exactly. And it does it in a way that's both entertaining and thought-provoking.
Right.
Not just preaching, it's inviting you to think critically about these issues, but through this fantastical lens, this parallel world.
So Otherworld is using science fiction to hold up a mirror to ourselves in a way. It's making us question our assumptions, consider different perspectives, and even though it was only 8 episodes, it's packed with these thought-provoking ideas.
It really is. And I think
Mhm.
that's why shows like this, even if they weren't huge hits at the time, they continue to resonate with people. They offer something unique, something that challenges us intellectually and emotionally, and they leave you wanting more. Do we need these kinds of experiences, these journeys into the unknown, the unfamiliar, to really figure out, to discover who we are?
It's like Otherworld is saying maybe getting lost is the only way to really find yourself. You know what I mean?
I like that. That's a really interesting way to look at it, and it definitely connects to the show's whole theme of embracing the unknown, being open to new things, even if they're scary, even if they're, well, challenging.
Right, right. Like it's a reminder that playing it safe, staying comfortable, well, that can sometimes stop us from really experiencing life, experiencing the world and all its messiness.
Absolutely. Otherworld is telling us to get out of our comfort zones, to question what we think we know, and to be willing to learn from everything, even the most unexpected encounters.
Yeah, and that's a really important message, I think, especially today, when we're constantly being bombarded with information, opinions, it's so easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles, just hearing what we want to hear. Other worlds, like it's encouraging us to break out of that, to really engage with different ways of thinking, even if they make us uncomfortable, even if they challenge our worldview.
And it does all that through this amazing imaginative world of science fiction. It's not just telling us what to think, it's inviting us to play, to get lost in this weird and wonderful world and to discover these truths for ourselves on our own. It lets us explore these big questions, these what ifs in a safe space, a space of imagination.
And Otherworld, even though it was a short series, it does that. It really does. It combines adventure, social commentary, family drama, and these mind-bending sci-fi concepts all into one really unique and engaging experience.
It truly is a hidden gem.
Uh-huh.
It deserves to be rediscovered, to be watched again. Who knows? Maybe our deep dive here will inspire some listeners to check it out, to see what they think, what resonates with them.
I hope so, because even though it aired, gosh, over 30 years ago, Otherworld still has so much to say about humanity, society, our place in the universe. It's a reminder that good storytelling, it never gets old, and that the best science fiction, it always reflects us, our anxieties, our hopes, no matter when it was made.
Very well said. So as we wrap up our journey into Otherworld, if you had to pick one thing, one key takeaway for our listeners, what would it be?
Hmm, that's a tough one. I think it would be this. Don't be afraid to explore the unknown, both inside yourself and in the world around you. Embrace those experiences, the ones that challenge you, the ones that make you see things differently. You never know what you might find.
That's a perfect note to end on. The universe, whether it's the real one or one we imagine,
Hmm.
it's full of wonders just waiting to be discovered.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Otherworld, everyone. It's been a real pleasure exploring this forgotten classic with you. Until next time, keep searching for those hidden gems of science fiction and never stop asking those big questions.